Last year, in my address to this conference, I warned against the dangers of complacency. I want to be slightly depressive as well, because I want to remind us this year that however robust our system is, there will always be mistakes. There will always be bad outcomes. As I said earlier this morning, there are some problems that the system, for individual children, the system simply can't resolve. The system as a whole can't resolve society's problems as a whole. But even beyond that, we make mistakes. We're all human. The system is run by human persons, and we make mistakes. We have to accept that. Sometimes we're able to ameliorate the mistake and recover the position, and sometimes actually we're not. An example of why it's important to be willing to recognize our mistake and try to correct them. An example is a well-known English case, and again it illustrates the importance of participation, which is what the ECHR is all about in our field. It's a case which actually went to Strasbourg, but it was a case involving a child who was found to be the victim of a quite serious sexual abuse. And the investigator asked the child to name the abuser. And she did. She said, "It was Joe." Now, the social services immediately went to the mother and said, "Your boyfriend has been sexually abusing your child. You have to exclude this man from your life." The boyfriend was called Joe. The mother refused to accept this. And because the mother refused to accept this, she refused to accept there was any basis for intervention. So the child was removed from the mother's home. In fact, was kept away for 2 years. The mistake was they didn't actually tell the mother what the child had said. The child had said, "It was Joe." The child had not said, "It was the mother's boyfriend." The child had said, "It was Joe." Had they said to the mother, the child says it was Joe, she could have said, "Well, yeah, my boyfriend's called Joe, but so is the next door neighbour." And in fact, it was the next door neighbour that was the problem. So there was a mistake, a clear mistake made, because there wasn't appropriate participation, there wasn't appropriate consultation with the mother. So this is why participation is hugely important, not just to preserve people's rights to have their say, but also because it's a more effective way of avoiding mistakes like that. There's a more difficult type of mistake, one which cannot be rectified. And again, it's an English case I want to tell you about, but I don't want to give the impression that this could not happen in Scotland, because it clearly could. The case is called Webster against Norfolk County Council. The child was born, and within a very few months, it was breaking bones. It was getting bruised very, 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 very readily. At least once a week, a broken bone, taken to the hospital. The medical investigators began to think, well, maybe it's something like brittle bone disease or one of these syndromes. They were all ruled out. And the medical evidence was that the only plausible explanation, once you've ruled out any likely medical problem, the only plausible explanation is that the child is being hurt deliberately or otherwise by neglectful parents. The parents denied it completely, so the child was removed and immediately stopped breaking bones and stopped getting bruises. And they regarded that as further evidence that actually the problem stemmed from the parents. But the parents refused to accept. They refused to accept any help at all because they said, "We're not doing this. There's nothing, it must be a medical problem." The medic said, "We've done all the investigations." Well, at the age of 3, the child was removed permanently from the parents. At the age of 5, the child was adopted. Then another child came along. And this other child, within a few months, started breaking bones and started getting bruises. So that child too was removed. And then the parents, they asked a funny question. but they should have asked it years previously. They said, might it have anything to do with the soya milk? What soya milk? Well, the soya milk we give the child. No, soya milk's not poisonous. Soya milk doesn't. Yeah, but we only give them soya milk. What do you mean? We only ever feed our children soya milk because we can't. They don't like anything else. You mean only soy? Only soya milk? Well, where on earth is the child getting its vitamins from? Where's it getting its vitamin B? Its vitamin D from? Oh, wait a minute. Suddenly it's realised the children were suffering from scurvy. The medical profession didn't recognise it because there hasn't been a case of scurvy in this country for 4 generations. So they didn't think that was a plausible thing to explore. So the newborn baby immediately sent home, and the parent said, can we get our other child back, please? And that's the issue that went to the Court of Appeal in England. And the Court of Appeal said, no, of course you can't, because you're not the parents anymore. You don't have any title to seek to get your child back, because it's not your child, the child has been adopted. And the nature of adoption is you can't unravel it once it's made. So, fair enough, the system made a mistake, a human mistake that nobody can be blamed for, but there's nothing we can do about it. This is one of the reasons that always makes me distrust governmental claims that child protection can be improved if only we could ensure that the processes acted quicker and easier. Only 2 weeks ago, the Education Committee of the House of Commons, thankfully only involved with English law, they produced a report saying children should be removed from their homes sooner and quicker. And that's the way, and we should make the adoption process easier and quicker, because that's the way to protect our children. British Prime Ministers have an awful tendency to say adoption is the gold standard, it should be available for all children in care. Both Tony Blair and indeed David Cameron have said statements to that effect. In Scotland, the Adoption Policy Review Group has been rather more careful. That was the review group that led to our 2007 Act, our new Adoption Act. They were rather more careful, and they said, what is good for children is not necessarily adoption. What's good for children is stability. Children need stability in their life. Now, one way to achieve that is adoption, but there are other ways. And of course, that act from that group invented the notion of the permanence order, which keeps the child permanently away from their birth family, but doesn't do what adoption does, which is to say that the previous family are no longer the child's family, are no longer the child's parents. And of course, you can undo a permanence order if it's proved that it's all a ghastly mistake. Don't get me wrong, I have no problem with the government seeking early intervention in families. It seems to me the perceived clash with ECHR principles. The European Court is always telling us, try and try again to reintegrate a child back into the family. You have to make all human efforts to return the child back to its natural family. But there's no clash here between a plea for early intervention and that, because early support, which is possibly a better way of putting early intervention, early support is actually designed to prevent the need for removal of the child in the first place. The key, it seems to me, is effective intervention while the family remains together, designed to minimise the risk that the state is going to have to step in even further and separate the child from the parents. And the Scottish Government's policy actually is to effect this shift from crisis management to crisis prevention.